Welcome to Week 4 of Pratt Institute's School of Interior Design XID 109 Drawing and Drafting Online course. I'm your professor, Margaret Kirk. I teach the presentation techniques in AutoCAD within the program. And what we're going to be discussing this week is we're going to be talking about what is the story about architectural drawing and what are the tools and techniques of architectural drawing. So what we're going to do for this week is start to introduce you into the concepts of construction drawings versus design drawings. And what we're going to be talking about today is the role of design drawings, getting us into starting to talk about what I call the essence of a project. So what is the meaning behind a project? As designers, we don't just design anything, willy-nilly by itself, but what we do is we inject a lot of meaning, a lot of research, and a lot of theory into what we create. And so this is going to start to get us to do the exercises in order to recognize through other projects what types of excuse me, what types of theories, what types of use of forms and shapes and other design tools, design aspects that designers have already put into their designs, and how can we actually glean that information out of drawings or a set of drawings. So to start, architecture is not simply about space and form, but also about event, action, and what happens in space. So this quote is essentially alluding to that architecture and design is not just about the space and the form, but there's more to it. And again, as I said, what this week is going to do is it's going to introduce us to greater meaning beyond just space and form. Here we have some examples of architectural analysis. Now, architectural analysis is a key and fundamental skill that we as designers employ. We're trained not to imitate it, but to take an informed collection of criteria and constraints and apply them to design. So this is a very important process for us because through analysis we gain a deeper understanding into the role of design through content and context. Now, content can be defined as that which is within our design. Okay, a column grid, an underlying shape and form used in the design, the role of location and lighting, and so on and so forth. So you'll find that there could be a lot that you analyze, from a design, okay, and there can be a lot that's actually put into a design when it is actually, conceived and developed. Context, okay, that explores how our design extends beyond the immediate site. So as a continuity, discord of a larger larger theoretical discourse. Now, all of these aspects inform design that we must be able to recognize these aspects of design, as they will either play a role in our designs or they'll maintain a catalog for the designer, okay, often internally to recall and design. So a lot of this process, what it does is it allows us to internalize this information, and by making this hand-mind connection, we actually take with us this catalog that essentially we've created throughout this whole analysis process throughout our career. So the power process of analyzing creates a mental cache for the designer to carry with them throughout their career, which is why developing our ability to analyze is crucial. Note that our analytical drawings are typically quick, okay? Quick drawings able to express the idea quickly and meaningfully. It's not an easy process, and it's not about just making really, really quick sketches without context behind them. We have to be mindful of what we're trying to communicate, within these sketches, but it's one that takes iteration and development. It's a language that we'll learn, okay, and it's the more you develop the skills of that language, the more efficiently you will be at communicating your analysis and ideas. So they are personal drawings in that they express what you, the individual designer, sees as value in the design process and the interpretation of space. And their diagrams your diagrams may be different from someone else's, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. It just means that you might be seeing something that's different in a design that maybe somebody else, might not have guessed or might not have thought to have analyzed. Analysis is a valuable skill, as we said, that allows us to communicate and test the ideas of design. So it's not exclusive to what is analyzing, but it's to the analyzer to determine that. Okay, different minds have different opinions about design, so there are no right or wrong answers if the analysis is rigorous. And that's going to be a word that you hear a lot throughout the program. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But as an investigation, it invites the analyzer to look deeply into the existing design to examine what may have motivated a project. So as a designer, it allows us to make a mental map or catalog, as we keep with us throughout our careers, as I talked about a little bit earlier. Research is a strong component, okay, so don't think that, you can kind of do this on your own. It does actually take a lot of outside research as well, because history, dates, theoretical discourses, they all serve to inform our search for the meaning of the project, but they may not be obvious in a superficial analysis. So you will have to do some research when you start to analyze. Analysis often includes the following topics, but again, it's not exclusive or limited to them. So this is not a finite list, okay, but this is a list to help you get going when you start to work on the assignment for this week. So we have the existing potential, form and logic, language, theoretical, process, and effect. Existing and potential, so what this does is it essentially examines what are the potentialities of the site. So when we examine and diagram the existing space, we look to see how the designer used the sites and the potentialities of the site for the basis of their design. These potentialities include, but again are not exclusive to, points of entry, circulation, constraints such as adjacent spaces, services, etc. Maybe it's an underlying grid, the treatment of a surface in an overall design, etc., etc. So I could go on forever and ever, because all of these aspects may or may not have some sort of an effect in the larger design. And what's important to note about that list, as I said earlier, is that it could go on, okay? You could have different ideas and thoughts about it, and that's fine. It's really just testing those ideas through the analysis of the project. So in diagramming, one should be exhausting the possibilities, okay, examining how every architectural element is incorporated into and exposes its role in the overall design. This process, okay, although it should be potentially long and thorough, although as I said, just creating the sketches earlier, they can be quick sketches. What it reveals is the parts of the whole, okay, the parts of the design that are connected to the whole of the design. So design is not performed singularly, but every aspect of the design supports the larger idea behind the design. Form and logic, okay, so what this discovers is geometry, and geometry has always played a central role in architectural design through the composition, imposition of shapes and forms, as well as an underlying spiritual meaning within the theory of form. This should be included within analysis in order to discover how designers have employed the use of form in their designs. The analysis should examine the role of shape and form in the proportion of spaces or architectural elements, as well as how it plays into the larger design. For example, a designer may use a circle for ease of circulation, or they may use a circle or square or dome, okay, to go from the two-dimensional to the three-dimensional as a centering device. Shape and form not only work in 2 dimensions, okay, but 3, as I noted, just a second ago, and are often translated into smaller details, again connecting the macro scale to the micro scale, or the micro scale to the macro scale of the project. So again, you're asking yourself, is if this project is so heavily focused upon shapes and forms, do they actually manifest themselves within details as well? Okay, so that's another way of looking at how shape and form start to affect the design. Language. Now, architectural language often examines the role of building elements in design as a language. So again, this may be a little bit more theoretical, but think about, your text, your language, and in architecture, our text and our language are essentially our building elements, so our walls, columns, et cetera, et cetera. So when examining spaces, we have to ask ourselves, how these elements also work with the design. Systems such as structural systems, as I mentioned, have a big effect on how design is implemented. And the analysis of these systems may explore how to work with these systems to create a solution. So a lot of times what happens is that you're faced with the design, you have a column grid, or you have an architectural element that you cannot change. And so what this allows you to do is to formally see how those column grids work with your spatial allocation, and you can start to see formally, and what it does is it objectifies the forms of space as opposed to subjectifying, program, let's say, for example. And it allows you to see, shapes and forms and how they work with each other in order to create a solution. There's also the theoretical, okay? Many projects, as I said, might have theoretical undertones. And so it's important, and this might be one of those times when you actually have to research a little bit more to try to figure out what those theoretical discourses are. But it's not uncommon for a project to follow this type of development. So in this analysis, the diagrams and the analysis have to explain something that may be a lot more abstract in order to communicate the discourse, and then subsequently communicate the reaction to that discourse from which the design is derived. So it might be a little bit more complex, but it still goes through the same process as everything else. Theoretical analysis may need to challenge drawing conventions, so we're going to start off with a couple conventional drawing types, the plan and the elevation. But you might find that throughout this process, especially when we start to talk more about analysis, you might have to change your drawing type. And that's okay. You'll find that there are limitations in drawings, there are limitations in drawing types, and because of that, you might need to explore what are the best drawing types in order to express your diagram or the idea behind your project. And again, that's going to be something that we're going to be exploring throughout the program and throughout your career at Pratt. So you also might, in turn, start to look at, well, are there aspects of collage that might help me better? Are there aspects of using a different drawing type that might help me better? So those are best, explored when you start to work with these types of analyses that are a little bit more complex and not as black and white.